All right, let's dig into some tips and trips by phase. Strategy. All right, when you're in the strategy phase, if you are working with stakeholders who have never done behavioral science before, it can help to start with a little training. Get the leader to come in, spend an hour, give a quick talk, get people going in this sort of methodology, get them excited about how we're going to work together. That training is really, really important. If new stakeholders get onboarded throughout, get them up to speed. That's really important to help you move forward. You want to try and write a behavioral statement, at least a draft, in the first meeting with your stakeholders, right? In that first meeting, you want to start. Don't start with a meet and greet meeting. Get into the workshop. Get into the hey, what are we really doing here? Because you're going to need time to resolve that. You should expect disagreement. You should expect disagreement, especially when it gets down to the nitty gritty of the variables. Hey, are we going to measure, total number of rides or total number of riders? There are going to be people who in each camp, and they're going to have to disagree and commit at some point. So you want to get those disagreements about early. If you think about what a behavioral statement does, it tries to take all of the arguments that we're going to have for the rest of the project and front load them right there at the beginning so that we are in a good place to move forward. If you are really, really struggling to make a behavioral statement, you might need some other kind of phase before this, right? It might be indicative that the business model is not sound enough. They don't really know why they're asking you to do the thing that they need to do. As a strategist, you might need to do some work with them to validate, hey, is this a behavior? Do we understand the motivations, right? Are we really clear on how we want to measure this? Are we really clear on why this is contributory to the business? Can we put dollars and cents behind that? Or can we understand that impact in a really crisp way? And if you can't, you might need to do that pre-work. Then you just release the rest of the team, pause the project, and go back and do that work. Do not start without confidence. All right, tips and tricks for insights. On the quant side, get your data, lined up early. You want to make sure that you have access to everything that you need, that you can anticipate future things, right? You want to start day one of the project going and figuring out where that data is and getting yourself access. You also are going to want to start on your definitions. You're always, sometimes, never, started, stopped as soon as you can. You want to get that data coded with a column that tells you what people are, because that's the thing that you're going to use to be syncing back and forth with your qual. For your qual folks, so one of the questions I get all the time is sort of how many people should I be interviewing? Generally speaking, I shoot for sort of, 3-ish per segment, right? So about, 3 to 5 per segment, which is going to give me somewhere between 15 and 25 interviews. Because remember, I have 5 segments, always, never, sometimes, started, stopped. So, anything more than about 5, I'm not really finding anything new. People do these studies where they did 80 interviews. You're not finding anything new in 80 interviews. There's something wrong there, right? You're either your behavioral statement's too broad, or you just don't understand what you're doing. The other thing I'll say is you need to make sure that you're asking questions that get them to self-elucidate and elicit what is going on. So, one of the things I can do, for example, is tell me at a time when. So let's say we're doing a project on exercise. Tell me about a time exercise made you feel good. Tell me about a time exercise made you feel bad. Tell me a time about an exercise made you feel guilty. Tell me about a time you fought with your partner about exercise. Tell me the time you celebrated with someone about exercise. You just want to start feeding these prompts that start to get people to just tell you those recollective stories. Those are really powerful in helping you do those things. For design, by far the biggest and most important thing is keeping that rigor that every single intervention that we suggest must be connected to pressures. It must be connected to the pressures that we are expecting it to change. I will not accept something just because it sounds like a good idea, just because we're in love with it. This is a place where leaders have to hold the line too. When you're doing a review with the team, when you're doing a critique, and they bring you a bunch of ideas, you have to say, what are the pressures behind that? Can you show me the research? They should be able to pull out research that tells you, hey, here's the thing that led to that pressure, that led to this intervention. And if they can't do that, you need to reject those and push them on that process. Designers, you should expect this level of critique. It's your job to hold the line. It's not good because it worked elsewhere. It's not good because it worked in the lab. It's not good because it came from some theory. It's good because it is concordant with our understanding that we did in situ, in this situation, with the people whose behavior we want to change. That's what makes it good. So really hold the line on that. In down selection, your job is really to help your stakeholders understand portfolio management. If they're only focusing on promoting pressure interventions, you need to say, hey, what about these inhibiting pressure interventions? If they're only focusing on high risk things, you got to make sure that's a conscious choice. There's no right or wrong answers here other than making sure that they're doing things in a conscious way and they recognize and understand the decisions that they're making as they go. So as I said earlier, these days I'm a behavioral science leader, but if I wasn't, I'd be a project manager. This is by far my favorite phase. Evaluation is by far my favorite phase. Why? Because this is where the rubber really meets the road. This is your opportunity to drive evidence that says whether something works or doesn't work. And remember, doesn't work is also a success. Finding that something doesn't work is fantastic. Because generally speaking, by the time it gets to pilot, people think everything's going to work. So if you can show that it doesn't, hey, make sure you put that on the board as credit. We avoided millions of dollars worth of waste for not scaling something that everybody was confident would work. By the time we get to pilots, everyone is confident in all of these. So every miss you avoid is value. Don't manipulate your results. Be clean, be clear. Remember, we don't need P less than 0.05. You just need to be accurate in your statement. I have some level of confidence that this thing happens. Here's the approximate effort. Here's the approximate impact so that people can make educated decisions.